Yeah, so we'll do a nice little open ceremony. That's right. Yeah.
G'day everyone, just find a seat, maybe grab yourself a pizza of a roadie so you stay well fed throughout.
Jared, how's it going? Oh, thank you.
Well, look, welcome to the Actuaries Institute and welcome to tonight's meetup. The Institute's been partnering with Eugene and the meetup for quite some time, and it's fantastic that we're able to host you guys. And just very quickly, by background, my name's Alex. I've been with the organisation about 2 months, but my remit is actually slightly different. I'm not an actuary, and I'm focusing on data and AI for the organisation, and really looking forward to Anthony's presentation today. We're planning on pulling together a summit that's most likely to take place around November this year. And for those that are looking to contribute some thoughts and ideas to some of that as well, I'm really keen to get some ideas from you guys in terms of what you think might be really interesting and of value to you. But enough from that, and we'll hand over to Eugene for introducing Anthony, and hope you have a wonderful evening tonight and get a lot out of it. I'm certainly looking forward to it. No pressure, Anthony. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for that intro, Alex, and thank you, as always, to the Institute for being such terrific hosts and supporters of the rapidly renamed Sydney AI and Data Science Meetup. Oh, yeah, good on you, Actuaries Institute. Very grateful to the Institute for supporting us. Also grateful to Zoe and the team for their constant and very, very good help. Today's speaker, well, I have a bio here, but you know, some people deserve more than just having their bio read out, and Anthony is definitely one of those people. And Anthony is an exceptional human being. I don't even know where to begin, but he's an exceptional human being in so many ways. You know, there are people who are exceptional because they tick a whole lot of boxes, and Anthony actually ticks a lot of boxes. But then there are people who are exceptional because they go well beyond that, and they do completely unusual things that you wouldn't expect anybody else to do. And then there are people who are unusual beyond that because they have amazing character, they have charisma, they have leadership skills, they have vision, and Anthony has all those things as well. You know, yes, this is a very nice meetup, but Anthony was running his own rather interesting and dynamic breakfast data science meetup for quite a while, and may do so again, who knows? I certainly would encourage it. He probably doesn't want me to tell you that he's an Australian full contact karate champion, but he is in Kyokushin karate, which is nothing to joke about. It's one of the toughest, probably the toughest form of karate, one of the toughest martial arts out there. And, you know, as far as ticking boxes goes, yes, Anthony's actually an actuary as well. But while that's a really difficult qualification to achieve for those who got there, becoming a fellow of the Institute is not a simple thing. I think it's nowhere near his greatest achievement, and what he has done as a data scientist, as an AI professional, and as a leader in that space overshadows even that. And I think he's found ways to combine the two. So I'm not going to read your bio out. I don't think I need to, Anthony. How about you tell us about AI?
Well, I'm told it's being recorded, so I definitely want to get that, you know, put that somewhere. Thanks a lot, Eugene. I really appreciate that. And yeah, wow. So yeah, as Eugene mentioned, I was an actuary, so this has all sort of come back full circle for me in a sense. But yeah, you're going to see now what I think will be a very different talk. there's a very good chance that I crash and burn completely. And if I do, take it in the right way. Don't turn me into a ray gun, because you know, failure is a big part of the job, and I think you all know that. But I sort of set myself a bit of a challenge, which was having no slides, which is very easy when you have slides up there to sort of keep you on the ball. And I don't consider myself a top public speaker or anything. You can just talk off my feet. So we'll see how we go with that. But I do think it was time for something different, because without naming names or pointing fingers or sort of having a big rant, which maybe over a beer later I can, but there's a lot of hype in this space. And I think it's important to get back to what we're actually trying to do, which is, you know, work with AI or data or, you know, tools and things, and actually build useful outcomes, call it, or create value. Obviously, if you're in a role like I've just been in, about, you know, creating business value for clients, sometimes it's a personal project. You want to just create something that's useful. And so to that end, what I wanted to do was just actual live coding, which is an absolute nightmare, and also actually build something from scratch in front of you, and hopefully it will work. But it is something I've done before, not doing it in front of people, but I've built something similar. And yeah, so let me just sort of lay out the problem. So this was beginning of the year, had a few extra days, and my job over the last year has been to basically run a practice in data and AI, in consulting, win business, you know, talk to lots of different people. Got one of our salespeople, Peter, here, whose job is basically to get me in the room with the right sort of customers who I can talk to, and, you know, start crafting solutions. And what you find when you're in this space is you get really busy really quickly. So if you're going to be a good consultant or a good sort of leave a good first impression, what should you really do? Okay, I'm going to go meet someone from, say, the Actuaries Institute as a potential client, and we go to them, and I rock up and I'm like, oh, actuaries, what is that? You know, ask some sort of questions to show that I actually have no idea what I'm talking about. Obviously, what I should do is go to their website, do a bit of research, see who I'm meeting, check out their LinkedIn, probably find out a bit about the industry, find out about what they're doing in AI, because that's obviously what we're, you know, pitching, and all of that stuff, which would, you know, if I'm doing it properly, would take an hour or two, and a lot of discipline. And I found I was never doing that. I was just going into meetings and just going, okay, who's this client? All right, let me, you know, seat of the pants. It's, you know, it's consulting, but I was like, I think we can do better. So what I thought I would do is try, given that we have large language models, given that we can give them agents or tools to do something like search, maybe I can find a way to get it to sort of do my research for me, and do it in a really easy way so that I can just sort of set it off, get my reports, and then go into the meeting prepared. So that's the idea. So if you think that sounds useless, no need to hang around, but hopefully it's interesting. The other thing I'll say is, when I'm talking and when I'm going through this stuff, please challenge me. Like, just put up your hand, ask questions, ask me why I'm doing something. I'll try to explain my thought process as I go through it, but I can't expect to sort of cover off all the cases. And so sometimes I might be doing something because that's how I've always done it, or I found it in ChatGPT and that was the code that it gave me, or sometimes it's something that's sort of been thought out well. So please don't just be silent and have me speaking to a sort of, you know, blank canvas, because then I'll just ramble off on tangents and it won't be useful. So that's my sort of challenge to you. All right, so let's get started. So I've got sort of two windows that I need to share now, so just bear with me while I chop between them. But maybe we'll start off with a README. And again, I'm going to be using all kinds of horrible coding practices, because this is a get it done as quickly as possible project and not a production ready solution. So I'm going to start with the to-do list. So the way that I see this working is, one, user sends email, and that email is going to have a particular format. Two, email kicks off, and if there's anything worse than typing in front of people, it's coding in front of people. Email kicks off a process to pass email. Yeah, that's fine. Then actual processing happens, and report is sent back to user. Any questions on any of that?
Who's the user in this?
The consultant, the person going, I got to meet Actuaries Institute in half an hour. Any other questions?
Is it outgoing email or incoming?
So I'm going to send out an email and I'm going to get an email back.
You're going to process the email coming back.
Yeah. Does that all make sense? There's a million ways to do this, right? But this is how I'm doing it. Cool. All right, so let's jump in. Let's start with the email, easiest part. So I'm going to do this through one of my email accounts, just because it's a corporate account, and I know, with having sort of played with this a little bit earlier today, I know that it will give you issues if you try to use like a Gmail, just with the email passing clients. So just bear with me. So I'm going to create a new email. I'm going to make it full screen so you don't have to read all of my other emails. All right, so let's leave the two for now.
I can only see the reading.
Thank you. I don't know about you guys, but everyone in my office always thinks I know IT, like, you know, how to get the screen to share and all that. And yeah. All right. So what I was thinking was the structure of this email might be, let's say, industry. I'm just going to use Actuaries Institute because that's where we are. I'd say company, but you could argue it's not a company, but it doesn't really matter. We could do more. We could, you know, look at the person and try scrape LinkedIn or do Googles and things, but I think this is sufficient. There's other things, again, which, you know, sort of full version might have, like, do I want to search in a particular locale? Do I want to do a particular language, etc.? But let's just use this as the sort of MVP. This is how we want it to work. Cool. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set some things up in Azure. So again, why am I using Azure? Because that's what I'm using. It has everything that I need. I am not the world's biggest Microsoft fan, but Azure has everything that I need, and they've got some really good stuff in AI. So yeah, just live with it. You know, I can, yeah.
Could you do this with AWS?
Yes. Yeah, you can do it with AWS. You can do it with this. I'm sure there's a ton of startups you can use for various bits of this. Absolutely. I mean, all we really need for this, and maybe I should talk about that before I just go building stuff. We need something to handle the email. So who are we sending it to, and how's that going to kick off something to process it? We need the actual processing engine. So, you know, where's it going to process this thing? Which, to me, I wanted to use serverless compute because A, it makes sense because it's going to be off when I'm not using it, and B, it was a cool thing for me to try when I started it. And what else do we need? Well, we needed to be able to send back the email. So again, similar client, but that's the idea. Oh, and we need AI, right? Sort of important. Okay, so let's kick off. First thing I am going to get is AI, because it's sort of critical part of this. Now, again, you can use ChatGPT directly for this. There's no issue with data leakage or anything. You're just doing an internet search. There's no reason why you need to keep it private. But again, it's all here in one place, so why not?
So when you're saying AI, you actually.
I just mean a large language model. Yeah, we'll get to the deployment, but yeah, that's right. Literally, this one is, there are so many different ways to do it. You can use Hugging Face APIs, you can use Bedrock, you can use, Claude or whatever you want. But again, this is all in the same place. This keeps it clean. So yeah, I said to Eugene, I'm going to keep calling it Data Science Sydney, and everything's going to be DSS. You can do some sort of networking and make sure that only the right people get access, but obviously we're in pure dev mode right now, and we're going to create this resource. Now, by the way, if you try to do this on your own, in your own sort of Azure tenancy, you will need to set up your tenancy with billing, and also because GPUs are in high demand, you need to actually send a little form to Microsoft to say, can I have some OpenAI resources? And it takes about a day and they give it back to you. So obviously didn't want you to go through that as part of this talk. Okay, so we got that. Now I mentioned we want some serverless compute. Again, you could do something like a Flask app in an Azure web app or a VM, but I'm just going to use an Azure function app, which is quite opinionated, but probably something most of you here aren't that familiar with. And that's why I think it's interesting to do it. Is that free, that name? Yes. All right, we're going to write it in Python. Let's do 3.10 just because I've had issues with 3.11 before. And we'll keep it in Sydney. This stuff I'll just leave as default. So it wants you to create a storage connection. That's generally so you can store logs and things. So we'll let that happen because I want to see logs if it goes wrong. Access to everyone. We'll let it monitor as well. So I think, again, that's got to do with logs. We can do CI/CD, which is really easy to do from GitHub, but we'll just deploy directly from VS Code here. And we won't bother about tags. Questions? Because I just went through a whole lot of stuff really quickly. Yeah.
This is just sort of like a Lambda function from AWS, right?
Exactly the same. Yeah.
Same, right?
I think they have some differences in how you deploy them and, the structure, but it's the same. All right, so deploying. And there's one more thing that we need, which I didn't mention before, which is important, is a search agent. So what I want to do is, in part of that processing, is I want to send my query to a large language model, and then I want it to actually go and search the internet for the solution. And you can do that with some free things, like DuckDuckGo has a free search agent, but it's rate limited. Google has a SERP API. Again, I'm keeping it all in Azure. And we will use Bing Search. Now, you can look at the pricing. There's all these different tiers. If I do a quick Google and say Azure search, or Bing search, pricing, it's got all these different tiers, and it sort of can do a lot of different things. You can do an image search, you can do a news search, video, etc. And there's the different details. So when I've done this in production, I think I've used S7 because I wanted, maybe it was S5, I wanted news and web. In this case, I can use free because I'm not going to be calling it a whole lot. Hopefully I won't hit the rate limit. 1,000 calls a month could be fine. All right. Uh-oh. No love. All right. What did we say? S5. It's not exactly going to be expensive, so. Sorry, this is what happens, eh? I think maybe I couldn't call it that. Ah. At least you know it's real, huh? This isn't just a video. All right, so I think I have everything I need. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at what I had in VS Code, which I think I need to, I'll just copy it in so you can see it, so I don't have to switch screens 5 times. So 1, user sends email. 2, email kicks off the process to pass the email. 3, actual process happens. And 4, sends the email back. Okay. So let's maybe go to step 3, which is the actual processing. That's obviously the meat of this, and that happens within this function. Okay, now there's a lot of how do you work with an Azure function app, which I've obviously done before and therefore won't be doing all of that now. It's not something you can do, learn all of that in the time we have, but sort of trust what I'm doing, and I'll cover a lot of it, and please ask questions if anything's not clear. But what I'm doing here is there's a few different ways to create functions. As you can see, it says VS Code Desktop. So there's actually an extension in VS Code which allows you to deploy directly. You can also do it through CI/CD, as I said. So let's go back to VS Code. It's black. All right, so what it looks like is you jump into this little Azure extension. I've already connected to the subscription, but if I hadn't, I mean, I can show you how to do that quickly. I think I can just disconnect. No. But what you do is you just say add and you log in and then you're connected. We'll go into the function app. You can see it's here now. Just created it, but it's here. And we'll go into our local workspace and we'll create a function. So we'll use the folder that we're in. We want it to be Python, v2, can't remember what that is. I'm going to skip the virtual environment because I'm actually not going to test it here. I'm just going to sort of wing it. And I haven't created one for Python 3.10. And what I want is an HTTP trigger, and you'll see why soon. So let's just name it DSS AI function. Let's give me brief because I need to use underscores, not dashes. All right. Questions? Again, there was a bit that happened there, but I probably can't answer them very well, but some of the configuration when you create a function. So you can see it's sort of giving me a little how-to. So I've got a little markdown file here. It sort of tells me how to use it. And it's just sort of created some boilerplate stuff that I can use. Again, because I didn't set the virtual environment, it's just giving me like, hey, I don't have that library, but that should be fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this purely boilerplate entry-level function, and we're going to test that it works, because that's before we go and do all kinds of fancy stuff. We want to make sure that it's working. Otherwise, we might waste time.
Did you just code all of that in like a second?
No, it came up automatically. Yeah, sorry, it's just superpowers. No, no. When I created the resource, it gave me that. This is like the basic boilerplate code that comes out, and you saw it gave me a bit of a function. So if I go into the folder here, it's actually created these files. So it's created a .vs code folder, which sort of tells VS Code how to send it. It's created a func ignore, which I guess says don't include certain files. it's actually made a Git project, which I didn't ask for, but fine. It's got the app itself, which is this bit. It's also got a host JSON file, which is some more configuration, and it's given me a whole README. I'm sorry, that's my README. It feels like somewhere else it gave me a markdown file, but I don't know where that's gone. And it's also created requirements.txt, which tells the serverless Python server to install what pip libraries to install. So as I said, let's just test it, and then we can worry about building what we need. So we need to go back to our Azure thing, and we're just going to right click and say deploy to Azure. And what should happen, okay, so it's going to just say, where do you want it deployed? Put it in that app. Bit of sort of loading happens in the bottom corner there. I hope you can see. Make sure you want to deploy it, yes. And at some point, this little thing is going to start processing. It's going to show me what it's doing. And depending on the size of your package, it's going to take some time, but hopefully this should be quite quick. I think when we do this later, maybe we'll do other stuff in parallel, but for now, let's just see what it's doing. I think if you click on the output window, it gives you more detailed logging, but I'm not sure. But yeah, let's just watch this. All right, succeeded, super quick. So let's go back to Azure.
Sorry, Anthony,
Yeah,
dumb question, but I'm not a programmer.
no dumb questions, yeah.
What did you ask VS Code to do for it to spit out the boilerplate?
So it's got this little Azure extension thing, and I just said, I want a new function app, and it just went blah, 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 blah. Here's your basic bit that you need for the function app. Yes, you can code it all from scratch, but why would you do that when it's all done for you? All right, if I refresh this, I should see my function, please. There we are. All right, so this is now in the cloud. It's an HTTP triggered function. What you can do from this sort of function app page is you can look at when people called it and things, but if I just jump into it now, I've got a little code and test window. And you can see the code here, it's all been uploaded to the cloud. And what I should be able to do is actually do a test run. And because if you look at the code here, and again, if you're not Python, don't be scared. What it's saying is, here's this route, which means if you call this sort of HTTP request, it's going to return a response, and it's going to look for the parameter called name. It's going to do some error handling, but if there is a name, it's just going to get the name, and it's going to say, hello name, it's triggered successfully. Again, this is just the boilerplate thing. You don't need to know it. So if I do a test run now, I give it the input. It's a post because I'm giving it a body, and I'll say name, and I'll say Anthony, and I don't need to give it anything else to test. And hello, Anthony, this HTTP function executed successfully. So it's working, which is great. And it's giving me a 200, which means successfully processed. Any questions on that? There's sort of a whole lot of stuff around REST APIs that go into this, but it's not that complicated what it's doing here. So leave it to the reader. Again, I don't want to sort of get held up too much on how everything works, but yeah, hopefully that's reasonably clear. So given we now have a working function, probably what the next thing we should do is we should build out that function based on what we've given it in the email. So let's just assume that we've done step 2, which we obviously haven't yet, which was make sure that when you send the email, it kicks off a trigger. But for now, we're just going to say, let's assume that it's got a trigger. Let's assume that when we ran this function, oh, sorry, when we sent the email, it kicked off a process, and this is the process. So what we need to do now is we need to say, all right, what actually did we send it? What did we post it? So it's actually going to look exactly the same, but instead of just pulling the name from it, we're going to take the whole And again, I should be doing error handling and all kinds of stuff, but I'm not. I'm just taking the whole JSON file. And again, assuming it has some kind of a JSON that it sends, because it's an API that says, here's your sort of request header, here's the sort of status, and here's the body, and the body is the response. So I think this is the right syntax, but again, we will find out. And again, let's just get rid of some of this other stuff so that it just fires and works. So all we've done so far is just create a little serverless function that does very little. And now we want to build out a few things. So what do we want to build? We want a large language model. Or maybe let's say we want pass the email contents. Put it through large language model. Give that large language model the ability to search the web, send back an email user. Cool? Happy? All right, now we actually have to do it. So I am going to cheat a little bit here, because I do have some code that already works with this, and watching me try to figure out exactly how to pass the text perfectly is not going to be a good use of anyone's time. So just bear with me. That's good. You can't see what I'm looking at. All right. So there's one thing we need to add here, which is we're going to get the body text. So as I said, it sort of gives you a JSON, which has the body of the email and blah, blah, blah. Again, this will be clearer to you when you see the postmark stuff. But then basically what I should see in that body text is what I showed you in that email there before, which was industry, insurance, company, Actuaries Institute. By the way, usually let me know if I'm going over time or anything. I think we're, yeah, just give me a bell or something if I'm struggling. Then what we're going to do is we're going to pull out those pieces. So how do we do that? Well, we want the industry and we want the company. So what we'll do is we'll say something like this. So again, excuse my copy pasting. It's not really live coding if I'm doing that, but give me some leeway. So, I mean, the key piece is this. And to anyone who's used to Python, this should be fairly straightforward. What I've got, so I'm just doing a little bit of error handling. I'm saying, okay, well, maybe the email you sent doesn't have industry : in it. So, you know, go gentle. But otherwise, I want to get the industry name based on taking the whole text. I'll put it lowercase just in case there's any issues with case. I'll then split out industry. Let me give that a colon just so it's a bit clearer. And then I'll take the number one, which is the second part of that array, right? If you've used splits on a string, it splits out everything on the word industry. So it will be the thing following that. And then I'll also split out new lines because otherwise we'll get industry name and then the company and whatever else comes after it. And then we'll just take the first one. Then I've also got some sort of regular expression. Let's take it out just because it's, again, it's just about error handling. It's not really needed. It's more just if you put other crap in that you don't need. Let's do the same thing for company. Oops. Also didn't build this on a Mac, so it's sort of taking me a little bit longer to remember the keys. Okay, so this should do the same thing. I should have the company name now. So whatever came after the colon and whatever came after the colon for industry. Now, yeah, if you remember the sort of regular expressions bit that was after there would get rid of things like leaving spaces and all that, but not an issue. Yeah, shouldn't break anything. All right, so we've sort of passed the email contents, done. Although there is one bit missing, which is who sent the email. We sort of want to get that as well, so that we can send it back to them. But we'll get back to that. Let's put it through the large language model. So we're gonna do a couple things that are very, very bad, but we'll do it anyway. We are going to, and again, I'm just going to copy paste. And so we got the syntax, because you really don't want to watch me look that up and copy paste it all back in. All right, so what we're going to do that's really, really bad is we're going to actually put the actual secrets in there, because it's not like I'm not going to delete this as soon as we're done. So to call an Azure OpenAI instance endpoint, we need the syntax. Now, obviously you can see there's a squiggly line, which means I don't know where you just got that from. Well, I'm using LangChain for everything here. So if you're wondering about all of that, again, I'm just going to put some imports in, and there we go. Obviously, it's not installed on this environment that I'm in, but that doesn't matter. It should work fine. And now we just need to get these things from Azure.
So you're saying it should work fine because Azure is got all that stuff there.
Nope, it's not going to work if we do it like this. So what we are going to have to do is we're going to go into our requirements.txt, and we're going to add LangChain. Yeah, so it's going to pip install everything that's in here. It's just a sort of automatic way of working. All right. So, and again, maybe I can just split screen this so that you don't have to keep watching me. That didn't work at all. Sorry, won't let me share the other screen. Well, maybe if I do this. Yeah. All right, so let's just go to our OpenAI. And to use this, and again, we haven't put any sort of networking controls on it. We're just going to jump into keys and endpoint, and we'll copy the key. Again, really bad practice. Don't ever quote me on this. Here's the endpoint. And there's something else that, I've forgotten. Anyone pick up what I've missed? Does anyone work with Azure OpenAI here? All right, I'll show you then. So in this Azure OpenAI, all I've done is actually just created an Azure OpenAI component, but I haven't actually deployed any models. So I need to go into the studio, and I actually have to select what model I want to deploy, and I have to give it a name.
So is this model running on like compute that's rented in the UI?
Yeah, but we're going to use it so sparingly here, it's not exactly going to rack up costs.
So is that also like a function based one that they do with it?
Yeah, it's an API. It's an API. So you can, you know, if you don't want to pay, use something like Gemini. It's free, or I think there's probably free tiers for things like this.
Or we could use like OpenAI API direct.
There's still a cost on that if you use that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we go to deployments. There's no deployments found. Let's create a new one. Let's call it DSS. Let's give it a GPT-4o because there's nothing like a demo with the best model out there. And I don't know if that makes much difference, but we'll just give it a bit more bandwidth. So now we actually have a model that's there. So now I can just call it DSS. And that should work. Okay, so we haven't quite put it through the LLM, but now we need to give the LLM the ability to search the web. So now we get into the concept of agents. So again, this is not a talk on agents in AI, but what I find is a really, really good resource, and I've mentioned already, is LangChain. It's a sort of orchestration framework for AI, but it's also really good place to learn because it's open source and people are just adding to it all the time, and there's all kinds of amazing stuff on there. This actually isn't what I'm looking for though. I'm looking for the Python docs. And if I wanted to do something like build an agent, this would show me how to do it. So here it shows you a few different things, and this is actually very similar to what we're building, which is a search agent. Tavali is a new company that tried to do search that presents results that are really nicely readable by AI. So worth checking out. But I was like, I can do it in Azure, so I'm happy. But again, if you want to learn how to do the stuff, this is where you go. So I learned, but instead I'm going to just show you how I build this. So you can actually see all my cheat code over here. And so there's a few different things that I've used. Actually, I'll just copy it all and then I'll step you through it and explain it. Okay. Sorry, I might just break these apart. It's too hard to see. All right, so there's a Bing search API wrapper. So this is again a LangChain component that allows you to wrap the Bing search API and present it to a large language model. So I'm just going to put Australia as the market here. Again, this is just from some other code that I had where you could do different countries and things. And we're not going to do image. And so then there's also this Bing search run, which is again, it's just a sort of LangChain artifact that allows you to, I guess, run that API wrapper. So what I do need to do is import these. Again, they're from LangChain. I cannot remember exactly what the call was, but if I search for like Bing search API wrapper, which clearly I've already done today, you can see it's in here. I think that's the right call. If it's not, we'll find out. So what you can see here, so I'll have to add this in. This is, again, I'm going to put the actual key in. But you can see it's sort of calling this Microsoft Bing API, which is something that you can use, but then you need to put in your key so that it knows that you're sort of who you say you are, and that you've paid for it. You've also then got K, which is how many results you want it to return. So we've said 3, you don't need to give 10 results and feed it all to the AI. There'll probably be more variability there. And then there's just some sort of location settings. So let me get the key from Azure. Yeah.
When you say that you're going to give it like 3 things, do you just mean you're telling it that you are defining kind of spaces with 3 variables, let's say?
Yeah, so these are parameters for this particular function. And I have been, because I'm sort of doing this at pace, what I would usually do is I'd have an environment that had installed all of these. And when you've done that, VS Code is really nice because it does, tooltips. So if I hovered over this function right now, it just says any because it doesn't know what it is, but it would actually give me a full sort of docstring syntax to say, here's parameter 1, this is what it is. Here's parameter 2, this is what it is, and you need to fill it in. So, but basically this is a Python wrapper for a Bing call to, yeah. So I'm just going to get my key again, sorry. So if I go back to my CSS and then my search, same thing, keys and endpoint. And I get my key. Now, again, the stuff like how I knew to use version 7 of the API and all that, you know, you look at the docs, it shows you, you know, what you should use, and you sort of have to learn like that. But as I say, I'm trying to show you the interesting stuff, not the usual. And this here, so, okay, so I've got my tool search and my tool news. But what I've got here is the agent itself. So this is how you set up an agent in LangChain. You basically say, sorry, this is the prompt to set up the agent. So I'm kind of saying what an agent needs is a prompt. It needs a tool or multiple tools, and probably what needs the large language model. So this is just the prompt. And so you set up a template in LangChain. Again, there's sort of some boilerplate stuff you put in, and then you set up the template and you go, all right, what are you actually trying to do here? Respond to the human as helpfully as possible. You have access to the following tools, put in the tools, use a JSON blob to specify a tool by Okay, I didn't write this. So this again came out of, I'm pretty sure, either the LangChain tutorials or actually out of the source code, because a lot of LangChain is basically just chaining together prompts. That's the whole idea. And all this sort of AI orchestration, there's nothing that fancy happening. It's just telling it what to do at different steps and handing it off to other functions. So again, I can answer more questions on that, but as I say, this wasn't like something I came up with by magic. It just came straight out of the docs, like most data science. So let me just import these libraries and make sure that they are in our requirements. So I think that's all here. For now, I don't know if I use that. Maybe I did. All right, and then, so that's sort of getting there. We still need to actually create the agent. Now, the type of agent we're using, you sort of saw it there, is called a structured chat agent. Now, how did I learn how to do all of this? I looked up, Googled, how do I get an agent to or LangChain to search the internet, and you sort of get to that part of the docs where it says, hey, this is a structured chat agent, and that's where a lot of this code came from. And so the syntax for actually calling that agent is in here, which is okay. So I've created two because I want one to be able to search the news, and I want one to be able to search the web. So just in terms of the syntax there, you create the agent, you pass it the LLM, you then give it the search tool because I want this to be the search, and then I want to put in the prompt, which is this. And then you have to wrap it in an agent executor, which I guess executes it and allows you to sort of call it like you would call an LLM. Now, what I found when I built this last time was there was something in this which just didn't work, and so I changed the source code a little bit. I'm going to go back to whatever the default is, and if we have an issue, then we'll know where to look. So LangChain agents.agent. Cool. So now we have an agent that we can use, and when we can basically send it to industry, and we can send it to company, and we can get it to search it. That's not quite enough, but we're getting there. So,
Something ahead here.
yep.
Does the LLM know what you're searching for yet?
No. So, perfect question. You set me up 100%. Let's say questions industry and questions company. So let's just come up with 2 or 3 questions for each one that we can ask.
Is there a reason you did 2 agents instead of 1 agent?
Yes. So I want to research the insurance industry. So I might say, what are the main Australian companies in insurance? That's a web search. If I say, how is the industry trending at the moment post-COVID? Actually, maybe that's also a web search. If I said, what's the sort of current market share, or I'm not thinking of very good examples now, but you know, what are some recent developments in the industry? Then I'd use the news. So that's the idea. So, you know, we could just have done a web search, but why not reach for a bit more? So let's use those examples. So because of that, I'm actually going to wrap these in tuples because I want to tell it whether it's a news search or whether it's a what did we call it? A web search.
I guess my question is more around like, given a question, isn't LLM smart enough to figure out that it has to use news versus if we pass it as
So
there's 1 agent, but like tools is an array.
Yeah, you're probably right. There's probably a little bit in the prompting template here where you might say, use the right tool for this job. But yeah, so if I was braver, I would try that now. But
Keep going, but you'll cut it.
okay,
Which is cool.
all right. Well, hopefully question time is happening while we're there. How long do we have for question time? Okay, I don't think we need that long. But, all right, so what did we say? Who are the main competitors in the industry? Again, if you're familiar with F strings, it should be clear what I'm doing here. And then, as I said, I'm going to make it a tuple so I can just say, I want this to be a web search. And we'll just call it search and we'll teach it which one to use. And then we can say news. What do we say? What are some recent developments in the should do it. And let's maybe just have 1 question for the company so we're not really here all night. What does something like that. Okay, and obviously you can imagine how you can pad this out with all kinds of questions as part of a sort of full report.
And Anthony, presumably, you know, the large language model could be more specific, like you might say what are the most significant recent as opposed to some random.
Oh yeah, and you can even say, I want the output to look like this, and I want, you know, this, all kinds of things. All right. So we've given it the lead to search the web, and now we basically just need to put it through and then send the email back, which we'll get back to later. So the next step is really to go for Q in, let's say for question in questions industry. If question, so if the little tuple thing that says search, then it's search. By the way, if I make any coding errors, shout out, please, because otherwise we're just going to deploy it. It's not going to work, and then we have to do it all again.
You missed the F. Second, questions. Questions company doesn't have the F.
What questions?
No.
This should be an F string.
No.
Thank you. How long have you guys been sitting on that? All right. I can't remember the exact syntax for that, but I think it's something like this. I'm going to double check that, but for now, I think that's fine. Else it'll be the news search. And then we'll do the same for the companies. Cool. All right, pass it through the LLM. And I guess we have to save the results somewhere, don't we? So let's just create a little. We can just be really shorthand. Cool. All right. So we will get back to this part. So now what we need to do is the whole email side of things. So there's a few, and again, this took a bit of sort of ChatGPTing and Googling and all that. But there's a few companies that sort of do this mass email handling. What I use is something called Postmark. Really sad because it's not part of Azure. But you can use something like Twilio, SendGrid if you want. But yeah, there's a few different ones. I set up an account last night and they only give you access to test mode when you set it up, but that gives you like 100 emails, so it's fine. And then they sort of check that you're a corporate and you're using it to not spam people, and then they give you access. So you start off with a server. And again, this has not been configured at all. So I've got an inbound stream, I've got a broadcast stream, which I think is when you want to send a crap load of emails, and a transactional stream, which think of it as a sort of outbound. So, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of stuff here, but this is how I understand it. The inbound stream is the one where I'll send it an email and it gets it. So that's the first bit, right? That's our sort of step 2, which is take that email that's been sent and handle it. So let's go in and configure it. So this was just me testing it earlier today. If I go to, well, this is useful. So we'll get rid of that because that's no longer relevant. So this is the actual email address. It's absolutely horrible. And when I've built this, I've just used an alias. So like I've set up like auto forwarding and stuff. But yeah. So let's put this in the email too. And currently that won't do anything. What we want to do is we want to actually kick off that Azure function that we created. So what we'll do is we'll create this webhook URL. And again, a lot of Googling and all that to figure out how to do this. But basically what you need to do is go back into Azure, go back to your function, and get the URL of the function. So this is the function app. I want the actual function itself. And somewhere in here, get function URL. And again, this is something you should protect because it's got a key in there, but we're not doing that today. Where did I want to put that? Again, in Postmark. Sorry, it's, my Zoom meeting is covering what I need to click on.
Yeah, top right.
On the right.
I know, I just can't touch it because my Zoom meetings drop down. All right, there we are. Let's copy paste it and save. Okay. Obviously, the next thing we need to do now is test that. So let's go back to our email. subject, doesn't really matter. Send. All right, so what should have happened now is Postmark, which just got the email, should get something in the activity. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Really annoying that I gave it the same subject as I did earlier. You can see the timestamp's different. And if you click on the email, you can see industry insurance. So you got the email and nothing else actually. I mean, often what you'd get is like a sender signature and all that kind of stuff, which you would have to pass out. All right, so Postmark got it, great. What about Azure? Now this definitely takes longer, but hopefully it won't be too painful. And for what it's worth, I mean, all it should really show is like that it did some processing of it. I didn't put in any logging, which was bad practice again. But if I click on invocations here, it should basically show me when it's being called. But again, there's some time in between when Postmark receives it and then kicks it off. So it can take a couple minutes.
When you were coding in that the dark,
Yeah, VS Code. Yeah.
was that sort of live coding where it was already attached to this thing here?
So when I click deploy, it sent the code up into there. Yeah, it's all right. It'll be on the video. I mean, I can tell you, like, I couldn't do what you guys are doing right now. Like, there's no way you can follow all of this perfectly. I'm just trying to sort of throw out things so that you can see what it looks like, you know, and maybe some of you can, but.
So this is all going to be recorded.
I'm told so.
So it says rec. Okay. And then where can we find it later? On the data science, on the Institute of Actuaries YouTube channel, where there is a data science Sydney playlist.
Okay.
All right, so it has done something, and it says success, which does not always mean success. It means that it got to the end. But hey, we did pretty well so far. All right, so, sorry?
Time.
Is it 6:30?
That's the test run.
It was a test run. Got ahead of myself. So it does have a refresh button, but I find actually refreshing the web page is better. All right, so let's keep it on faith for now that it's going to work. And while we do that, let's talk about the next bit, which is sending the email back. So Postmark also has a Python client. So you can say, you know, import Postmark or whatever the exact syntax is. I'll just pull it from the already working code. And then I can actually just tell it to send an email. So if I go to wherever, blah, 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 something like this, send an email. All right. Hello Sumo is the product we have at Avec. Speak to Peter if you want to hear more. But yeah, we'll just say DSS, your search results. And we will do it from, I guess, my email address that I'm using, because that will work with Postmark because that's the email that I have the account with. So it will allow me to send from that. It won't let me send from any email address, which is obviously a good thing. The from email we still have to get. The subject we've already given. The body, instead of out, which was from some other code, it was results. But it probably won't work if I give it a list. So let's just new line join it. All right. Why is that not defined? Did I not do that? Okay, It's an interesting one. I think I probably need to, it's probably the object and then get the instance. There it is. Oh yeah, I need to actually give it a token. So again, postmark. And somewhere in here, they've got, it's probably, because I'm now using the transactional stream, which is what you use to send emails. In the settings, I imagine that's the token I need. All right, so now it should send an email back to whoever sent it. So now we just need to define this from email, which again should come from, I'll go back to postmark and show you. We should be able to get that out of the body somehow. So let's go back to our inbound. Sorry, it's died on me. So just that example email that we had. So if you actually look at the raw source of JSON, you can actually see this is actually what it's seeing. So when I said like pull in the JSON and the trigger and pull out the body and all that, this is where I'm getting that from. So it looks like I can use from. Now, that may not work all the time, but let's trust it at least for today. So it will basically be this, I think. And then it should basically just send it back. And obviously here we're just sending it back to myself, but that's fine. So this should be the whole thing. If I redeploy it, so this is where I go, I right-clicked, I said deploy to Azure, and then it will ask me where do you want to deploy it, and we'll send this up there. Now this is totally not going to work because I've forgotten to give it that library. So let's just go cancel, and let's put that in the requirements. It's called post marker, but I'll double check. Post marker. Let's just double check our function as well. So it did work. So because we hadn't redeployed, this was just the boilerplate one. So it probably will just say like it executed, but it won't tell us the name or anything because we didn't give it a name. But this came from postmark instead of coming from the test, obviously. So it's all sort of linked up. So moment of truth, let's deploy what we've built here and then test it with a real email.
Is the postmark here just the middleman to store the email?
Not so much store, but actually
Pass it?
So it uses something called a webhook to kick off the trigger for the function. So the way that Azure function works is different ways to trigger the functions. One is HTTP, which is just a REST API. So like you could also do this by using like, you know, curl or something to sort of get or post what you need. But Postmark will do it based on an email has come in and it will hook in and then hit the trigger.
There's no way to do that in Azure itself.
The closest I found was Twilio SendGrid, which is in the Azure Marketplace, but it's not an Azure native thing. Now, you could probably build your own email server in Azure, but I'm definitely not the person to ask about that. All right, so this is a bit bigger. It's got to install a few more libraries and there's a bit more code to upload, so it should take a little bit longer, but I was pleasantly surprised at how quick it was before. So while we're waiting for this, let's just create our email again. Got to find that brutal. Copy paste it now. Now, again, this has obviously been a very much like a development talk. If you want to do this at your company, there's a lot more to think about, like security and, you know, even whether they will let you send emails or receive emails using something like Postmark. So I'm obviously not covering any of that, but it's not just something you can build and they will come. All right, subject doesn't matter. Call it research. We'll again use the Actuaries Institute. All right, let's make sure it's deployed. Yep. All right. So let's sort of watch it as it goes. So let's make sure the inbound stream comes through. We've got a new subject now, so it should be clear. No, that's quick. Oh, retry. That's interesting. I have no idea what went wrong. So with Postmark, it sometimes doesn't work, sometimes because of timeouts and things like that. And what it will do is it'll retry it 10 times, sort of like in a minute, then in 2 minutes, then in 3 minutes or something, and then eventually in like half an hour, which is kind of annoying if it is working and then it sends it to you a whole lot of times. But it looks to me it's got a 404 error, which means it can't actually find that URL, which is pretty weird because when I redeployed it, it shouldn't have changed the URL. So I don't know, but imagine that's also not something that's going to be resolved on the next run. So let's see if we can quickly fix it. Because I was really hoping this was going to work. Okay. Maybe I can blame like the internet or something. Oh well, this is why we love live demos. I think it feels like we might have actually reached the end based on the fact that I can't. You know, yeah, as I say, it's totally nothing that I did. It's just purely the internet has conspired, or the Wi-Fi or whatever. So
works out well timing wise.
Yeah, exactly. Well, look, I was hoping we could sort of send it once and it would work, but technically it should work. I've said that before and it hasn't. And there could be other little bugs in there, which, you know, first time it's probably never quite right. But hopefully you all learn something and you can see what's meant to happen.
Well, we had a pretty long presentation from Anthony. We ran question time throughout. We'll still have our networking session afterwards. You're hanging around for a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, and, yeah, it was a long presentation, so sorry if it was longer than you hoped. But,
so if you have any questions for Anthony, ask what remains of the pizza. And now is the customary time for announcements. And Chris, where are you? Please.
Hi guys, I may have met some of you before. I work in recruitment for data as a whole. A lot of our roles tend to bridge across data science as well. I think just a couple of things to cover off quickly. I think a lot of people ask us about the market in general. I think it's in an okay state at the moment. permanent roles, if you're looking for that, I think it's still best to go to companies directly that have cost pressures for agencies. On the contract side, we can help out a little bit more, and we've got a couple of different roles at the moment. One relatively rare kind of head of type position to build out a practice. Some shorter term contracts, people with pricing and machine learning backgrounds coming up. So yeah, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards and we can chat future, it's just Chris at SKL. And then yeah, beyond that, we're also planning a bit of an info session that we'll probably host online or potentially in a forum like this around helping people through their job seeking journey, because I know it's quite tough to be just going through LinkedIn and Seek at the moment. But if you have any questions or need any advice, just come get me afterwards.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody else have any announcements, particularly any positions going? Okay. Thanks once again to Anthony for a terrific presentation, and to the Institute, particularly to Zoe for making all this possible. Thank you all for coming.